So we're continuing Tehilim, Psalms, chapter 69, Samach Tet, for anyone who wants to follow. This is a long chapter, so we're going to divide it into two parts. And B'ezrat Hashem, next week we'll do the second half, plus hopefully Perek Ayin, chapter 70. Just a quick introduction. For those of you who may not have been here from the very beginning, the book Tehilim is called Tehilim for a good reason. Psalms in English is not really an accurate translation, because when we say a psalm, a praise to God, we can use other Hebrew words like shevach. There are various ways to describe the many words that he says, whether they're a shevach or a hodaya, a thanks to Hashem. But Tehilim is much more powerful. It comes from Hallel. Lehalel means to raise, to elevate the centrality of God in our life. As we learn Tehilim, or as we read Tehilim on a regular basis, we may forget what exactly we're doing. We're familiar with prayer, but even that, unfortunately, is not taken seriously enough. If people really knew the power of prayer, they'd be praying with a lot more intent. They'd be more focused. And they would pray hopefully for the right things, not for silly things. In putting together Tehilim, David HaMelech asked Hashem that may this be equivalent to one who's learning your Torah. In other words, this has great importance. We know that this is divinely inspired. But it's not just something that was inspired, it contains prophetic words, which is incredible. If you really look through this book, you will see that David HaMelech is not only talking about his own personal experiences, his own time, he's talking about the future. Somehow, we know that this is through divine inspiration, he's able to see what will transpire in the future. He also retells us what has happened in the past. So in some ways, it's like a mini history book, even though it maybe does not contain all the details, but it does contain the highlights. And when we speak about highlights of 6,000 years, we're talking about ups and downs. The good days, the difficult and challenging days. So one who's already familiar with Jewish history will have a better idea what he's talking about, where he's headed. But I think that the most important concept that is being conveyed to us in Tehilim is, as I said, the centrality of God. Don't forget, there's a God who not only created the world, he is someone that you can turn to, you can pray to, you can depend on, you can trust him. He knows exactly what's on your mind. He's aware of all our actions and deeds. And you know what? Even that which is long gone, he doesn't forget. Zocher kol hanishkachot. He remembers everything that man may have forgotten. And there's a lot that we don't know. Not everything has been recorded. There's no video or audio of the past. Could you imagine if we had a video of the parting of the Red Sea? Not the one that's made in Universal Studios, the real one. Mm-hmm. So people hopefully would realize, wow, there is something called a miracle. But they see miracles today too. When people have a terminal illness and somehow they come out of it. They say it's a medical miracle. It's an exception to the rule. Yeah, but what does that mean? Are you aware of what you're saying? What is a miracle? A miracle is something that happens from God. In other words, there's someone involved in our life, there's some power out there that we can turn to that can make things happen. And no matter what our situation is, one should never give up hope. And turn to him, pray to him, and that is why you find a lot of what appears to be repetition of all kinds of difficulties that he had, because they encompass almost every aspect of our life, from the time we're born to the day we leave. And talks a lot about reward and punishment, where we may think that the wicked, even though they appear to have the upper hand, and they may appear to get away with it, no, it's not so. You don't see everything. We don't have 20/20 vision when it comes to the works of God in this world. He's in charge, and he knows exactly what's going on, even in the far remote reaches of the earth. Even if somebody's hiding, he knows exactly what's going on with him, what his real intentions were. We see people who smile at us and they may be our worst enemy. Yes, David HaMelech speaks about too. So he speaks a lot about life experiences and what people can go through and do go through. And some of them are very, very difficult. We should never know of the pain and suffering that people go through. But it's a fact of life that there's nothing new under the sun, Shalom Amelech says. What has happened in the past will happen in the future. There will always be poor and rich. So in order to gain a better perspective of why certain things happen, Tehilim does offer some of the answers, even though he does it in a way that is poetic and sometimes a little bit of an enigma. What exactly is his message? That's why we're learning it in depth with the commentaries. However, from time to time, I have to admit, I will insert my own interpretation or some addition to what is said, because not because it was left out, but because there are times that one can enhance or elaborate a lot more on some idea with history, with certain facts that may not have been necessarily related to this verse. Still, it may be related in some way, so I will add it in at times when I see something is relevant. So we're going to continue Perek Samach Tet Lamnatzecha Shoshanim LeDavid. We've seen this word before, that this is for the conductor, on the Shoshanim for David. Shoshanim, some say, is a musical instrument that looked like a rose. There were all kinds of musical instruments that were used in conjunction with the music at the temple, in the prayers, the various chants by the Leviim, and as well as with David, who is known to be a musician. So it could be that that's what the word Shoshanim is, but Shoshana, or rose, is many times a way to describe the Jewish nation. The good smell, the fragrant smell that it gives out, how it is surrounded by thorns. And so there's a lot of meshalim, a lot of parables that use or borrow the word Shoshanim because of its beauty and what it represents, what it gives out. So if it's referring here to the Jewish people, as some commentaries say it does, a great deal of this chapter makes sense of why he chose to use Shoshanim in the very beginning, because he's talking about the Jewish people. He's talking about their difficult challenges that lie ahead in the Galut, in the diaspora. Remember, he's talking about this information before the construction even of the first temple. He was not around to inaugurate it. He was involved in the planning, but his son Shlomo built it. Still, he's aware. He's aware, he has prophecy, and he's definitely aware of what's going to happen to his people. And I would have to say that he definitely had a very special soul. Not only was he a holy man, not only was he a great man, the fact that he became king in itself says something, but there were other kings who were not as pious as he was. So we know from what the rabbis tell us, and we see from the Tehilim he wrote, that this was a righteous individual, which is why he merited to have all these prophetic visions. So in speaking about the future, in this chapter, the next chapter, he speaks about the many redifot, the many persecutions, the pogroms. Now, unfortunately, not everyone learns history. Not everybody likes history, whether it's Jewish history or world history. Something that it's boring. But it's important. It's important to learn from the mistakes of the past. That's what really history is about. Learn from the mistakes. It's not just facts, numbers and facts. The prime minister at this and this period was so-and-so, the king was so-and-so, he married so-and-so. That's not so important. It's the actions. What happened during that time? What was the source of the trouble then? Why was the Beit HaMikdash destroyed? Tisha B'Av. We mourn for the destruction of the two temples. Why? What exactly led to the destruction? Why is mourning so important? So some of the answers we have here in Tehilim. When we praise Hashem, we praise Him for the protection that He accorded us, despite the fact that we suffered. Protection despite the fact that we suffered. Yes, it could have been a lot worse. There has been a continuous hashgacha, a continuous divine providence over the Jewish people that is miraculous. According to the statistics, we should not be around by now. So he touches on that too, how with other nations in the world, the assimilation took a big toll on them. They pretty much disappeared. Whereas with the Jewish people, even though there has been assimilation in various forms, whether it's the culture or intermarriage, We're still around as a people. So this is due to what? This is due to the hashgacha, to the supervision from above. So in describing the situation, David HaMelech says it's important for us to pray and not say, well, God, you take care of us. You'll take care of it, right? We're your people, we're your kids. Please, no. You got to do your share. Never think that God will do everything for you. You have to do your share. And part of our share is to pray. No, doesn't God know that we're in trouble? Yes, of course He knows we're in trouble, but He wants that connection. And prayer strengthens that connection. It reminds us of our dependency on Him. Hoshi'eni Elohim kivau ma'imad nafesh. So He begins to say, Hoshi'eni, help me, save me, deliver me, God, from the waters. Now, what happened in the water? Don't you know how to swim? No, it's worse than that. It's not just water. Kivau ma'im ad nafesh. These waters have reached until my soul. Now, okay, when somebody's drowning, I guess my soul means my nose, because that is where we breathe. I can't breathe anymore. So he's drowning. What's going on that you're drowning? Can't you swim? Well, obviously this is a description of a very dangerous situation where he has no outside help, no lifeguard. And when he talks about water, it doesn't necessarily mean waters. It represents some danger, a great danger. And this danger that David HaMelech is describing to us in various pesukim is both a physical and a spiritual danger, which is why he uses the word nefesh. Nefesh is a spirit. So even though you could say, yes, nefesh is the ability to breathe and to remain alive, it is also a description of the continuous danger to the Jewish soul, assimilation. So even though we physically may survive, but what about the nefesh? What about the neshama? What about that? That's always, unfortunately, has been a threat to the Jewish people from within our people and from without. From the outside and from the inside. There have always been threats. And help me, because the waters have reached till the nefesh. And that's, of course, a very desperate plea. Why is it a desperate plea? Because otherwise he didn't have to say, Ba'u ma'im ad nafesh. It's still here. It's a desperate plea because David HaMelech is aware that in the long diaspora in which we are right now, we will reach a level of impurity which is even lower than in Egypt. And in Egypt it says we reached the 49th level of 50, and Hashem says, I better take you out right now because 50th level is very, very difficult to come out of. That's the level of heresy, of kefirah, of idol worshipping, paganism. You get stuck there, you're going to have a hard time coming out. It's like an addiction. For those who don't understand, what does it mean I can't get out? Once you're addicted, it's really, really hard, even if you want to help yourself. But in the long diaspora of close to 2,000 years, can you imagine? Egypt was 210. What could happen in 2,000 years? A lot has happened. We will be in the 50th level. How can we come out of it? Because we have the Torah, something that our forefathers in Egypt did not have yet. But he says, please, don't let this go on forever. Kibau ma'im ad nafesh. There are many, many Jews who are in the 50th level of Tumah, don't even realize it. And that is what he will talk about later on in describing a little bit of the hester panim, of God's concealment of His face, which happens when we're in a very, very low level, distant from Him. We don't even know we're in trouble. That's how bad it is. So that's what he pleads. He pleads with Hashem that we're going to be there. We're going to be at this point, and therefore don't prolong it indefinitely. Tavati bi'ven metzula ve'en ma'omad. Bati b'ma'amake mayim v'shibole shetafatni. So here the words are not too difficult, but he seems to be a little bit repetitious. But he's not. As I've always said, even though he uses synonyms and words that are similar, each one represents something else. So I have sunk bi'ven metzula. Bi'ven is in the mud that is at the very bottom of the ocean. It's muddy. I've sunk to that level, to that point. Metzula in the depths. And ve'en ma'omad, there's no foothold, I can't stand. Bati b'ma'amake mayim, I've come into deep waters. V'shibolet shetafatni. Shibolet is a current of water. And the current swept me away. So this is again a description of water, but now he's adding the word depth, and he's adding the word mud to tell us that there are certain situations that will be very, very difficult for us, where we thought we're finished with one oppressor, and then comes another one, and then comes another one. Not too much time to stand. Not too much time to be just calm down and, hopefully deal with the problems properly. There's no time. It's one after another. There is the depth of the waters where we're sinking, then there is Mama Kemayim, then there's Shibolet, and there's a current of water that are sweeping me away, all kinds of decrees by different kings, expulsions. Do you know that the Jews were in Spain for 500 years? They had a golden era there. Advisors to the king. Very successful. It doesn't last forever. And this repeated itself in many areas, especially in Europe. We were there for a long time, but there were ups and downs, a lot of ups and downs. But in describing this as a danger because of water, he also is implying that one of the greatest dangers is when they decree against the study of Torah. Many people don't know about our history, but there was a burning of Sifrei Torah, of books of Torah in France, many, many hundreds of years ago. Why? Why would they want to burn our literature, our books? Don't you want to preserve it at least? I mean, it's history, it's a culture. But this was obviously a sign from Shamayim, from heaven. If we don't respect our own Torah, they're going to let us know, our enemies are going to let us know. But when the Jew is taken away from his Torah, like in Hanukkah, when they made various decrees to limit our access to Torah, it's great danger. We may think, what's the big deal? We can still keep Shabbat. No, this is the way it begins. They begin by taking you away from the Torah, which is the source of your life, which is what gives you direction, which is what reminds you of your identity. So you can't afford to let go of learning Torah. We need to learn Torah every day, a little bit at least. So water is compared. Torah is compared to water. Rain is also used as a comparison because of what it does for us. It gives us life. It sustains us. So part of the reason why he uses water in this example is because of the danger that the Jews may become distant, either on their own or by decree from the Torah. Next pasuk, Yagati bekor'i nihar groni kalu einai meyached Elohai. Very interesting way of expressing himself, how he cried out so much to Hashem that he became sore, he became dry. That's what it pretty much means. I'm tired, Yagati, weary, because I've been crying so long that my throat is dry, it's parched from so much crying. Kalu einai meyached Elohai. And my eyes have, I think the best word for kalu is languished. You know what the word to languish means? In other words, I don't have any more eyes. They've been so saddened that there's no ability for me to look up anymore from looking forward or from waiting so long for my God. Now, here he's describing a situation where it's taken so long. He's cried so much. So there's a beautiful mashal, beautiful parable that tells us how one can know if somebody's been crying for a long time or not. There was a father that once came home and he sees his child crying because his mother is not around. And he's looking for his mother. And the question is, how long has he been crying? If it's in the very beginning, the child will be crying a lot. You'd be hearing his voice. But if the mother didn't show up so quickly, if it's been a while, he eventually just calms down. He eventually cannot continue to cry as loud. So that is why you see here a description of a throat that is dry, because he's been crying so much. In other words, a lot of tears have been shed throughout this long diaspora that he already sees will take place. But why talk about that? Why talk about how long he's been crying? This is, like I said in the beginning, the importance of prayer. He's telling us no matter what happens, no matter how long you're in Galut, don't give up hope. Don't say, well, Mashiach is not coming, chas v'shalom. There's no end to this, is in sight. And many people have thought like that. So he says, look what I did, and follow me. I've cried out even though I have no more tears left, even though I'm already dry. Continue to hope. Pasuk Hey, Rabu misa'arot roshi sonai chinam, atzmu matzmitei oivai sheker, asher lo gazalti az ashiv. Very beautiful pasuk, very informative. But let's first translate it. He describes that his enemies are more numerous than the hair on his head. Now, somebody who's bald may not think too much of this. Well, how many hairs? He must have had a lot of hair, right? But he says, my enemies are greater than the hairs on my head. Okay. What about son'ai chinam? Those that hate me for no reason, without cause. Atzmu matzmitai oivei sheker. And then mighty or strong are those who would cut me off, those who are my enemies without cause. Asher lo gazalti az ashiv. What I have not stolen, I will then have to return. So if you look at it just superficially, what exactly is he talking about except the fact that he's mentioning enemies, that there are numerous enemies? First of all, the first point that he's making is that it is a miracle that we're still around despite the many enemies that we've had. So, pay attention to this detail. There are many. All right. Now, many times when the enemy confronted us, persecuted us, you should know, all of the time, most of the time, it depends if it was directly our fault or not, but many times it was for no cause, without cause, meaning that it was a made-up story that they made up in order to push us out, in order not to give us equal rights, in order to exile us. It was chinam, for no reason. And this has happened by many of them, but not just enemies. They were powerful enemies, as he will explain a little bit later. And what did they try to do? They tried to cut me off. And this happened through advisors to the king, this happened through the kings themselves, this happened through bishops and cardinals. And that is why he says, Atzemu matzmitai, they were powerful, in powerful positions, those enemies of mine. But what I find interesting is the word here, oivai sheker, that it was all false. Now, if you were to read it by yourself, you might think that the meaning is that it was without cause, like he said earlier, and it was a complete lie, a fabrication, what they claimed, the reason for going after us. But Rashi brings here a very interesting interpretation. Do you know many times why they hated us and why they went after us? Because we did not adopt their false religion. We did not follow in their path. Even though it was mistaken, and they may know it's mistaken, they don't like the fact that we do not convert or we do not adopt their ways or their tradition, because that will continuously prove that they are wrong. So long as the Jew remains steadfast, remains firm, and does not give in, that is a big blow to many other religions who claim, oh, God changed his mind, and this is the New Testament. And that is outdated and no more. And we say, no, he never changed his mind. This is the only testament. You can make your own religion and call it what you want. That's fine. Believe in God, that's great. But don't say that he replaced us. Don't say that he replaced the Torah. Don't come and baptize us and force us to join you. this is for you and this is for us. So it hurt them. It pained them. They hated us because we did not adopt their sheker. And they knew it's sheker. It's man-made, it's invented. Now, it's better than paganism. Right? There's a lot of good people out there who are not Jewish. Very righteous individuals. And nothing wrong with the fact that they have a different faith, different customs and traditions, as long as it's monotheistic. So why bother us? Just be who you are. It bothered them. So part of what the problem here is that they have an issue with it. And part of the problem is, of course, when we misbehave, that Hashem uses them to remind us that we're not behaving ourselves. So when they blame us for something, they accuse us of something, it's only Shamayim. For the most, I said like before, for the most part it is. Sometimes, as we will soon see, it could be out of jealousy. Sometimes it's because they're upset for some reason. But usually this is also behashgacha. This is also through divine providence that Hashem is upset at us. But what about the last words? Asher lo gazalti az ashiv. Even that which I did not steal, I have to return. They made us pay high taxes. They made us come up with a lot of money just to stay put in the city. Oh, you don't want us to kick you out? Then you had better come up in the next 3 days with so much and so much gold. I'm sure you've read stories like that throughout history, where it was the one in charge of the town, the community, the city, the country. You know, there was various levels of rulership. They mistreated them, worse than slaves. They made them come up with tremendous amounts of money because they knew they can get that money. You want money? Go to the Jew. He has money, somehow. And even though they were poor, many times poor communities, somehow they would have to borrow, they would have to go somewhere else and beg. So I'd have to return even that which I did not steal. No, you stole. I did not steal. Go prove it to them. We're not talking about democracies. And even in a democracy, you can have this. When perhaps they blame you for something that's unfounded for some reason. This is possible too. Next pasuk. Elohim ata yadata li'ivalti v'ashmotai mimecha lo nichadu. Also a very important verse where he describes that Hashem is aware of everything. He knows the truth. You know my folly. Ivalti is my folly, my silly mistakes. You know my guilt or my wrongs, ashmotai. Mimecha lo nichadu. They're not hidden from you. In other words, you know the truth. You know that it's not what they claimed, that you've abandoned us. You know that it's because we made mistakes. This is somewhat related to the previous pasuk in explaining why certain things happen to us. Yes, it happens to us because we deserve it. In other words, in Hashem, you know the truth. In other words, why did they do what they did? Because it's coming to us. So if you ever hear a non-Jew saying to you, God abandoned you, or he doesn't like you anymore, or he switched sides and he now wants us to be the new religion, it's not true. And there's ample proof for that, by the way. But here, he's saying that don't, let people think along those lines, because you know the truth that whatever happened to us is because of ivarti. It's my folly. I've made mistakes, but it's not because you've abandoned us and you changed your mind. Also, remember, this is an important point that he repeats various times in reminding the Jew that things don't happen for no reason. All of a sudden there is a president that doesn't like you, all of a sudden there's one that does like you. This is all from Shamayim. This is all from heaven. Next pasuk. Ad yevoshu bi kovecha Adonai Elohim tzevaot al yikalemu b'mevakshecha Elohei Yisrael. Now he makes a special prayer. It's just because some people suffer, including himself. Don't let that in any way be an excuse for others who are not so religious, who are not so knowledgeable, to think, well, you see, the good guys are also getting hit. That means that they prayed for nothing. That means they were wrong to hope. Perhaps what the enemy is saying is true. He has to say this, and he said it already before, because a lot of people misunderstand God's actions. We don't fully understand why he does certain things, but we have an idea from the Torah. But what about those who don't learn the Torah? They actually may think the wrong thing. They may have wrong ideas, poisonous ideas. And history is full of such individuals who said the time has come to stop being primitive. Don't live in the dark ages. The dark ages, we made a commitment to God. We promised, we swore. What about that? It's worthless in your eyes? It's a piece of paper? You see, you have to be very strong to resist all kinds of pressures from people who appear to be intellectual. I've analyzed the Torah, they tell you, and I think there's several authors. What are you going to tell somebody like that? Several authors? I was brought up that there was only one author, it's God. No, I'm telling you, you can see from the language, the way it's written. It's written different in Bereshit, different in Shemot. The books are slightly different. And if he's more knowledgeable than you, you're in trouble. So David HaMelech is concerned about all these kinds of situations where people will be smart alecks and try to use all kinds of things that happen against us. And he's saying, in Pasuk Zayin, he's saying, let not those who hope in you, who really know the truth, be shamed through me. Here I'm saying something, I'm promising something, and if it doesn't happen, if you don't deliver, it's not going to look good. My God, he says, the God of Israel, and he adds Tsevakot over here. The word Tsevakot is the God of hosts. Why be so descriptive of God over here? And one explanation is because you are all capable. You can do it. You can do anything you wish. You're the God who's in control over everything. Another important lesson that some Jews from time to time need to learn. He controls everything. Even the mazal he can change if he wishes to. So sometimes the word Tsevakot is used to make that idea clear, that he is capable of anything. So therefore he asks, because of, for your sake I have borne in humiliation, disgrace covers my face. So here he uses the word humiliation. Ali kalemu. You will see in the next pasuk that he has various other terms used for humiliation. Simply stated, he's asking that the words that he's expressing should be well accepted, that Jews should have hope and should understand that everything is from God, and they should look forward to your salvation. So don't disappoint us. Don't let those who hope in you be shamed as a result of the words not coming true. So he starts out by saying, let it not be that those who hope in you be shamed through me, through what I'm saying. And he finishes with Ali kalemu, because for your sake I have borne humiliation. And humiliation is more of a form of act that describes people making fun, people mocking, ridiculing you. He's gone through this himself, and he says the Jews will also go through this. People will make fun of all kinds of things that we do. And this may cool off some Jews, as it has. What are you doing? Not turning on the light on Shabbat? Well, in those days they used to maybe bring fire through, rubbing stones. They used to work hard. Today it's just a light switch. Why are you doing this? You're not mixing meat and milk. You're not wearing wool and linen. Things that are difficult to comprehend. And those who are not knowledgeable have a hard time with it. And they go through humiliation. So when he uses the word humiliation, it has to do with being ridiculed, especially by the non-Jew, who tries to tell us, stop doing this. This is no longer important. And we know it's not true. Before we go on, in the next pasuk, I just want to also mention that when David HaMelech speaks of himself, in some ways he's also reminding us how important it is to confess. If one did something wrong, he did it. No reason to be ashamed to say, it was my mistake, I did something wrong. It's the proper way to turn to Hashem and pray and ask for forgiveness. But confess. If it was something that was your ashma, as I said before, whether it was your guilt or your fault, so say so. This is part of our prayer. We're not hiding anything from Him. We admit it. And if a person is not contrite, is not remorseful, it's going to make it difficult for him to connect to Hashem. He can say all of Tehilim 10 times a day. It won't help him. It has to be sincere. So part of being sincere is confession, vidui. And he continues on to say what the Jewish people will be going through and what he has gone through. Because as we said earlier, whatever happens in the past will happen in the future, and in many ways he represents the pain and suffering that will befall the Jewish people. Ki alecha nasati cherpa ki setach elima fanai. Pasuk Chet, verse 8. Because for your sake I have borne humiliation. Actually, this pasuk is separate from the one we said before. Before, when I said Al yikalemu b'mevakshecha, the word yikalemu is disgraced, where here he's using the word cherpa, and cherpa is really humiliation. So they're very, very similar, but the two are separate pesukim, and I may have mixed the two together. So before he said, let not those who seek you be disgraced through me. And now he adds, because for your sake I have borne humiliation. Disgrace covers my face. In other words, whatever I have done for your sake. Also an important detail. It's not that I'm asking for myself. I've done it for you, for your sake. I've observed your word, I've followed your word. And whatever I'm asking is not just for my own benefit. I'm asking you that people believe in you. But all that I have absorbed and all that I've experienced has been disgrace, shame, and humiliation. When he talks about cherpa, humiliation, what exactly does he have in mind? So disgrace, shame, cherpa, they're all very similar. But the rabbis tell us that, there were times in our history that boys and girls were sold into prostitution. There were times in history where a king demanded that a bride, before she's married with her husband, her real husband, that she be with the king the first night. All kinds of terrible decrees. In a sense, a rape. So they were humiliated in such a way, sometimes they couldn't resist. Sometimes they threw themselves overboard. They were on a ship, and they found out that they're being sold into prostitution, boys and girls. Righteous kids, pure, neshamot. They went overboard. Said, we're not going to let them touch our body. So look at all of the humiliation that they went through. This is a form of humiliation. And there's various forms that they went through. Whether it was mockery, ridicule. And that's why he describes every one of them. That we should understand that this is what we've been going through. Now imagine someone who doesn't know Jewish history. He says, what is he talking about? And why repeat himself? Humiliation, disgrace, shame. Aren't they the same? So you really have to learn the history, read the commentaries, what they have to say. What exactly is he saying? He's talking about the various kinds of experiences that we've had. And it covers all of that. We have no idea. Just a tip in the bucket, just a drop in the bucket of what went on. Pasuk Tet, Muzar ha'iti le'achai ve'nochri livnei imi. I have become a stranger to my brothers, an alien to my mother's sons. Okay, my brothers and my mother's sons. Do you think that they are the same? Well, it appears to be. Not necessarily. Who is he talking about over here that he was a stranger? I saw the Chidah, big Kabbalist, bring down from a big rabbi, that here he's insinuating his own personal situation as he was growing up, how his brothers suspected that his mother was not really his mother, and that he was somewhat of an illegitimate child. There's a whole story behind it, how they suspected. Of course, it's totally untrue. But look how people sometimes can think and how rumors spread and terrible things happen. And he's gone through that kind of experience too. But according to the commentaries, here he's talking really more about our other brothers, Esav and Ishmael. Whereas Echai, my brothers, refers to Esav, and Bnei Mi, the children of my mother, refers to Ishmael. They're our cousins, our brothers, family, and they were not there for us. On the contrary, they mistreated us. And they sometimes went against us, even though they promised to help us, in the end they went against us. So I was like a stranger to them. That's what he means in Pasuk Tet. Now, what I did not say, the commentaries say, what I'd like to add is that look how interesting it is that David HaMelech is pointing to that he was a stranger because they didn't treat him as a brother, as an equal. On the other hand, when it comes to religion, look at Islam and Christianity, they all take from us, they all borrow from us. In other words, our Torah is okay, but we're not. So it's muzar, as he says. I'm a stranger. Yeah, I don't know why. But we know why. It's all Mishamayim. Even though it's not exactly completely dictated from above that a particular person will hate you. You know, people have feelings and people can express their dislike for you because of jealousy and so forth. But still, their actions against us is from Shamayim. So, he says, I would expect better from my brothers, but even they turned against me. For the envy of your house, the Bet HaMikdash, has consumed me. Achalatni, consumed me. V'cherpot chorfecha, and the humiliations of those who scorn you have fallen upon me. So here he begins to explain a little bit why they hated us. Why? What do you have against us? He says, I'll tell you a little bit. Don't ask them, they won't tell you the truth. It's called jealousy. They're jealous that the Bet HaMikdash is in Yerushalayim, the Shekhinah is with you. And even though they may not admit it, part of it has to do with jealousy. He reveals to us a very important idea. You want to know why? Again, there are other reasons, but this is an important idea too. We're talking about competing religions now. It's not that we are the sole monotheistic religion. Now we have two additional religions in the world saying we have the truth. And they're jealous somehow. Why should they be jealous? Right? They would want to have the whole thing. So what brings out the jealousy is that home. It's your house, the Bet HaMikdash. But this, unfortunately, jealousy is also part of the problem that we had in the Second Temple. The jealousy, the sinat chinam, the baseless hatred that led to the destruction of our temple. So the problem of kinah is amongst us too. This is what has befallen me. Their jealousy and the scorn. And as a result of that, I have been in exile for so long. In other words, they persecuted me with all kinds of excuses, but the bottom line was the jealousy of who we are and what we stand for. Next pasuk. Actually, the next 2 or 3 verses you can really read together. It's one idea, so maybe I'll read it together. He's talking about what he did to mourn the fact that the Jewish people, in other words, are in exile for so long. I made sackcloth. I wept while my soul fasted, and it was a humiliation to me. I made sackcloth my garment and became a byword, a mashal for them. Yasichu bi yoshvei sha'ar uneginot shotei shechar. And those who sit by the gate speak of me, and of me are the songs of drunkards. So imagine, he's describing how he cried during the many fasts, how he put on sackcloth, And all of this, they took it the wrong way. Instead of looking at me and saying, wow, look, he regrets what he did. He feels bad that he sinned. They took it the wrong way. Look, he's still continuing to be Jewish. He's continuing with those rituals. Or he's a faker. They scorned him. So they said all kinds of things except for the truth. And that is that we did pray on Tisha B'Av and did cry for the restoration of the Bet HaMikdash. We did fast because of what happened in the past for the real reasons, hopefully. But they took it the wrong way. So what you have here in these 3 Pesukim, beginning with 11, where he fasted and wept, and all of this was a humiliation, up to the point that those who are in the bars singing, the drunkards that he talks about in verse 13, are just making fun as they're drinking. It was the lowest class of people. That's all they talk about. This is very, very actual. This is, if you read history, you will find what went on in Europe, Eastern Europe, how the Eastern European population was many, many times not very friendly. And they were drunk, many of them. And they all caused us trouble. And they made fun of us. But how could they make fun of a people who's not drunk, a people who is more enlightened, people who prays and learns and has a strong community connection? They're united, they help each other. Why make fun of them? So he's saying, no matter what I did, they looked at it, they took it the wrong way. They despised it all. They made fun of me. I was a mashal. They used my name as a mashal. There goes the Jew. And they used the Jew to connote some other vulgarity or some other description of something that they didn't like. So even though this is described, by the way, in the Torah that this could happen, he says, this is not exactly what I had hoped for, but this is what did happen or will happen, because he's talking about the future. So the reason to bring this out is to remind us that, and I connected to the following pasuk with the prayer, that despite it all we continue to pray, is that Hashem, look, what they think, how they act and behave, and what we do. What do they do in their New Year's, and what do we do? In our New Year's, Rosh Hashanah, Selichot, we pray, we regret what we did the past year. We blow the shofar to awaken our hearts to you. We pray and ask for a good and sweet year. And what do they do in their New Year? Vodka, and more vodka, and more vodka. Or some other whiskey. And fireworks. Look at their New Year celebration, and what is the New Year's for us? A beginning of a year of new commitments, real commitments, Teshuvah. It's a serious day, it's a happy day too, because Hashem will forgive our sins in Yom Kippur. But look at it, so therefore, that's the way I put it together, that right after he introduces us to how they acted against us and how they made fun, Ani tfilati lecha Hashem et ratzon, I continue to pray and I turn to you during those times in earnest. Even though he's describing how they acted in a very scornful way, in a negative way, there were quite a few individuals who did not take it the wrong way. They understood what we're doing, and they were respectful. And one of them I need to mention is Napoleon. The famous story with Napoleon, at least that's the way they tell it, that he was once going by a synagogue, and it was Tisha B'Av. And what is it here? Cries. Adults, not children, adults crying, sitting on the floor. He says, what happened? And somebody translated for him. He says, about 1800 years ago or so, their temple in Jerusalem was destroyed, and they've been exiled. And ever since, every year, on that day, they cry. He says, really? For something that happened so long ago, they're still mourning and wailing? He says, I'm confident that such a people who do not forget their past will eventually see their temple rebuilt. Amen? Yeah? Imagine somebody who had insight into understanding the value of the prayer and not giving up hope. He was able to see that there's something to it. He didn't make fun of it. He says, the majority of them made fun of all that I did, or all that the Jewish people are doing. But I continued in my way. This is a very famous pasuk that we say from time to time. So the translation of the pasuk, may my prayer to you, in other words, our God, be at a gracious time, et ratzon, in your abounding kindness, berov chazdecha. Aneni b'met yishecha, answer me with your true deliverance, salvation, and so forth. So here, he's talking about et ratzon, a propitious time, a gracious time. Rabbis tell us, yes, there are some propitious times, gracious times. We don't know what they are, when they are. And Hashem intentionally made it so. Otherwise, imagine, we would only pray at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. That's when Hashem listens to us. Hashem says, I'm not going to tell you. I want you to pray to me all the time. But rabbis do tell us some ideas of what is a better time. Tfilah b'tzibur, praying in a synagogue with a group of people, not by yourself at home, even though you can pray at home, but it's not the same. Et ratzon is bizman o be'et shatzibur mitpalel, when the public, when the many are praying together. That's an et ratzon. They also tell us about this pasuk that it may be that prayer has a gracious time, a propitious time, because the gates are sometimes open, sometimes closed. But teshuvah, the gates of teshuvah, repentance, are always open. So even though with prayer, lefamim patur, lefamim sagur, sometimes open, don't forget that with teshuvah, if a person wants to do teshuvah, it's always, the gates are always open. So he's asking that during this time, even though he doesn't know when it is, Hashem should answer him. Now, even though he does not know when that time is, he's asking that it should be an et ratzon. So he realizes he doesn't know when that time is, but he's asking that it should be an et ratzon whenever he's praying to God. Why? Berov chazdecha, because God is kind. Answer me with your true deliverance, because the true deliverance comes only from Hashem, not from a human being. So I want to know for a fact that you're going to help me. This is an interesting idea for another reason. Many times you may have heard people go to a grave of a big tzaddik, of a very righteous, holy man, and they pray that. You have to be careful not to pray to that tzaddik. We're praying to God in the merit of that tzaddik that's lying here. You don't pray to a man, you pray to God. But you're standing there because you're asking in His merit, may we be delivered. So Hashem is kind, and even though sometimes we don't deserve it, we remind ourselves that Hashem is chesed. And therefore, even though it may not be such a good time, we ask Hashem through the kindness that it should be a propitious time. Okay, just a few more pesukim here. Atzileni mitit v'ledba'a in atzila mesonai v'ma'amakim ma'im. Now he goes back, because he's talking about prayer, and telling us what the prayer was all about, and repeating a little bit of what he said earlier about the mud, and the depth, and the waters. But he says this for a good reason. So pasuk tet vav, rescue me from the mud, from the mire, so I do not sink. Let me be saved from my enemies, and from deep waters. So it appears that he's not saying too much more than what he said before, but the commentaries explain that he's referring to the various enemies and stages in history where we will be in the hands of different empires. So he's talking about various empires, so I'm going to include that in the next verse as well. So let's look at the next one, Tet Zayin. In Tet Zayin, he continues on to say, Al tishtefeni shibolet mayim v'al tivlaini metzula v'al te'etar alai be'er piha. Let not the current of water sweep me away, that's shibolet, or nor the deep swallow me. Metzula is depth, the deep. But here he adds a word that he didn't use before, v'al te'etar alai be'er piha. Don't let the pit close its mouth on me. The pit, the grave, which really means the Gehenom. according to the commentaries. So here, in describing the various empires, who is he talking about? So they say that the teeth represents Bavel, Babylonia. They couldn't move out from there. They were like stuck for 70 years. And I would like to add that he perhaps is calling it tit, or describing it as such a place where he's asking not to sink, that unfortunately not all the Jews came back to build a second temple. Only about 44,000 came back to build a second. A lot of them already opened up their business. They wanted to stay behind. Some of them intermarried even. So he's comparing perhaps that situation to mud. Being stuck in Atzilam Yisonai Mimawake Mayim, to be saved from all my enemies and from deep waters. All kinds of enemies that hurt them or disturbed them. There were Kutim who didn't want them to build a second temple. You think they had it so easy? Koresh says, go ahead. Imagine the Persian king, go ahead, go back home, build. And then you have guys that don't want us to build. You have people that wanted to stop us from building. All the time. So these are all kinds of enemies. And what is Shibolet Mayim? Who is he describing with the current of water? Anybody want to guess what came afterwards? Madai, Haman. They wanted to destroy the entire nation, like the current of water, to sweep them away. Who's Metzula, the depth of water should not swallow me? The Greek, with their philosophy, to swallow me, that I should become assimilated to their culture. And who is the Be'er Piyah, the mouth that wants to cover me and swallow me? Which, even though it refers also to Gehenom, it refers to the Roman Empire, because it's the longest exile of all, the greatest danger, like something that threatens to swallow us forever, chas v'shalom, God forbid. Aneni avonai kitov chazdecha kirov rachamecha pnei elai. So in describing to us what will happen, he says, don't forget to pray, which is what he's doing now. Answer me, my God, for your kindness is good, according to your abundant mercies, turn to me. The key word here is turn to me, as I said in the very beginning. Remember, there's a concealment of Hashem's face. There's a ester panim. During this last galut is very, very strong. So strong that many people will not even know that there's a concealment. Haster astir, a double concealment, like the darkness in Egypt. So when he uses Pnei Elai, he's not just telling us that we need to pray, that Hashem should answer our prayers. He's done that before. Here he adds, turn to us, because ester panim means you're turned away. It's one of the worst punishments, God forbid, that the Torah describes, when Hashem will turn his face away from you. I don't want to look at you. Imagine a dad telling his son, I don't want you to see my face. It's the worst thing in the world that can happen. And unfortunately, sometimes it does. So we have to realize this, that Hashem is turned away, and we have to ask him to turn back. So it's not that we want a good parnasah, good livelihood. It's not that just we want to have it good and we want to be healthy. No, we want him to come back. We want to continue to have a relationship with him. So we're asking for a relationship, not just for us to not be punished or to not be hurt by the goyim. And again, the kitov chazdecha, he always adds the word chazdecha because we need his mercy, we need his kindness. After all, we turn to Hashem in reminding ourselves that he is kind and he is merciful. Ve'al taster panecha mi'avdecha, as you can see in verse 18, he says that clearly. And do not hide your face from your servant. Kitzarli, because I'm in distress. Maher aneni, I ask for you quickly, before it's too late, before more Jews are assimilated. Answer me. So here we clearly see that he's talking about the concealment, or a period of time that will be especially during the long exile, where there will be distance, where the prayers will not be heard, and we will see, unfortunately, tremendous troubles. He's referring to the greatest, perhaps the greatest concealment of all, the Holocaust, where 6 million Jews died. Even the righteous were amongst them. So we definitely have to always pray. Rabbis remind us that it's always a better idea to pray before the tzara, even before it happens. Don't pray, Hashem, this guy is not feeling well, help him with his health, help him recover. That's very nice, it's special. Pray for yourself too if you're in some predicament. But pray before it happens, that's even better. Because when it happens, you need more merits to be saved. Pray to Hashem that when I turn old, I still can walk and I don't need a stick. Well, a stick you sometimes do need, maybe you have to hit someone. Pray that you should always be healthy and not have to depend on doctors or family members even. It's a big blessing. So pray before things happen. It's easier. Next pasuk, Korvail nafshi ge'ala leman oivai pedeni. Draw near to my soul and liberate it, redeem me, so that my enemies not feel triumphed. In other words, they shouldn't think that they're better than us, that they somehow we're victorious. So come close to me or draw near me. This is a continuation of the Esther Panim that he's asking for. And of course he's asking about the spiritual connection that the Jewish people should always have with Hashem. Bring us close to you, that otherwise we will become another statistic like the Goyim are going to say. They shouldn't say, oh, the Jews are going to disappear in another couple of years. Some people think like that. So Hashem, Korva el nafshi, draw us near to you that we do not become a statistic like they claim, like the enemy wants to say. Pedeni, therefore, redeem me from that, so that I should not be like many of them have become, a statistic of the past. If anybody's aware of what I went through, all the shame, it's you. You know my humiliation, my shame, and my disgrace. All my tormentors are before you. People forget history, but you know. Now this pasuk right now is an introduction to next week. He's telling us right now what's going to happen to all the tormentors. Hashem, you wrote it down, right? You know who they are. And you know about the humiliation, you know about the disgrace, you know about everything that I went through. It was I, the Jewish people. Humiliation has broken my heart and I have become ill. I longed for comfort, but there was none. For consolers I did not find. So here, in these two pesukim, Chaf Aleph and Chaf Bet, which is where we'll stop, he's telling us that one of the things that broke my heart, one of the most shameful things that broke my heart, is that the Goyim really thought that I have no cure. There's a midrash that says that when they went into the temple, they saw the cheruvim, you know, that golden cover over the ark that shows two children like angels. See, they worshipped idols just like us. They were just as bad as us. He says that kind of a shame broke our heart. The shame where they had this impression that we were real sinners. And even though it's partially true, but it's not like they thought. So I became sick from this. I wanted some words of comfort. I wanted to find some way out of this situation where I can restore my, my self-respect. I couldn't. Nobody would comfort me. They said, that's it. The Vatican said the Jews are not going back to Israel. In 1948, they said, well, apparently they're coming back, but they're not going to get Jerusalem. In 1967, they had nothing else to say when we got back Jerusalem. You see, there are peoples out there, enemies, who simply are not willing to come to terms with it. The Jews have not been abandoned. Yes, they misbehaved. They're in exile for a reason. But I had nobody to comfort me because they were against me. Who's going to comfort me? Hashem. Anochi, Anochi, umenachem chem, the Navi says. The prophet says, Hashem says, I will comfort you. Because I know, more than anyone else, I did not forget what you went through. And these individuals, vayitnu bevaruti rosh velitzmei yeshkuni chometz, which is an interesting verse. And they put a bitter herb, gall, into my food, and for my thirst they gave me a vinegar to drink. The best way to understand this last pasuk here is that, like they say in Hebrew, samu melach ala petza. They put salt on the wound. If anything, they made things worse. You lost your home, you're being exiled. Make us feel good, make us welcome. No, you have no equal rights. You can't get ahead in life if you're a Jew. This was throughout history, many, many places, many, many years. This was the fact. In other words, they only made things worse. They put into my drink, in the little bit, the varutis, in the little food that I had, they put a little bit of this bitter herb. And to quench my thirst, they gave me vinegar. So obviously, this is a description of the long diaspora that we've been going through, the many pogroms, and they see that our situation has not become necessarily any better, even though now it has. And therefore, they made fun of us and betrayed us. All of this, of course, will turn around very, very soon. We're receiving here a real good description of many, many things that we totally forgot, but Hashem remembers. He has them in front of him. And very soon, as they say in English, the tables are going to be turned. And the world will see with greater clarity that God never abandoned us. That's what they've been claiming. They had to find some excuse to oppress us, not just to kill, not just because they're barbarians, even though they were. No, they killed our God. No, they're communists. No, they're capitalists. Every single time some other accusation. Can you decide which one it is? It didn't help. But it's only Shamayim. The point is that we've suffered a lot through this, but the time is soon coming where we're going to see the consolation.
Amen.